Hi, Susanna.
Hi, Jivana. It's so good to be here with you.
Thanks so much for joining me. It's great to see you. So I was wondering if we could start with a centering. Maybe you could guide us. Is that okay?
I'd be happy to do that. It's one of my
Okay.
favorite things to do. So I'm going to use a bell just because it's a tool that I like to use to center my mind. So I'll invite the bell 3 times and do a little guidance. So wherever you are, you can sit or stand or lay down. If it feels supportive to you, you can let your eyes gently close or gaze at a soft spot in front of you and let the sound wash over you. Breathing in, I'm aware that I am breathing in. And breathing out, I am aware that I am breathing out. In and out. And you can allow your attention to focus on the sound of your own breath. Inhaling and exhaling. Or any sounds that you notice in the space around you, whether they're far away or close. Maybe the hum of a fan or air conditioner or heater. Noticing the quality of the sound, not so much what is causing it. So is the sound low or high, intermittent or consistent? And now we'll turn our mind to being supported by a mantra. And a mantra is simply a sound, a phrase, or a word in any language that is repeated in order to provide a support for the mind and for our attention. And so for me, I often notice what's coming in my day as I choose my mantra. And so if I have a day full of stressful things or a lot going on, I might choose the word peace or patience. If I'm wanting to connect to the vibration of a sacred sound, I may choose Om, Om. And so this is kind of a choose your own adventure mantra moment. So you can take a breath and notice what would feel supportive to you. A quality like strength or peace or a sacred sound. And then we'll sit together in silence for just a little bit longer and practice with that mantra on your inhale and exhale. So it might sound something like this: peace, peace. Or Om, Om. And we'll take about 10 breaths, each doing our own unique practice. And if you prefer not to do this, you're more than welcome to just sit and breathe. We're about halfway through our breaths. And if your mind is distracted, gently and lovingly bring it back to your chosen point of focus. In a moment, I'll invite the bell to close out our centering. And I invite you to let your mantra of choice continue to echo in your consciousness, even as we come out of formal meditation. So if your eyes were closed, you can let them open. And wherever you are, first just look around the space that you're in, taking in color and form, light. And if you have other browser windows or things open that may distract the mind needs all the help it can get. So I invite you to close those and just come really present with us now to connect and have this discussion together.
Thank you, Susanna. That was beautiful. I could feel the Thich Nhat Hanh influence in that.
Yes, he's one of my main meditation teachers.
Yeah.
You know, for many, many years, he's such a gift to the world, and I'm grateful to be able to share some of what he has to offer through my teaching.
Great, thank you. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows you, but I wonder if anyone doesn't, would you mind saying a little bit about yourself? Just.
Well, I just laugh at that one because I feel like I'm like you. I'm an activist, and I see myself as a yoga unity activist, and I perform that role in various ways, whether it's through teaching yoga teacher trainings, writing, speaking, teaching. You know, there's so many ways that happens, but my real personal title is yoga unity activist.
That's a good one. I like that. Yoga unity activist.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay. But also, I think you're known for that summit. I feel like that was really a big moment that I saw in your career. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but what is it? What was it called?
It was honor, don't appropriate.
Honor, don't appropriate, of course.
Yeah.
Honor, don't appropriate. Yeah.
Honor, don't appropriate yoga summit. And that, you're right. I mean, it's funny, right? Because it's like I've been teaching for 2 decades and practicing longer than that. I know to some people, maybe I look young, but I've been doing this for a while. And that summit came from just such sheer frustration that the dominant yoga narrative is white, and able-bodied and cisgendered and able, and that all the yoga summits, all the teachers just kind of, or the majority of, looked a certain way. And I thought, I want to do something that makes it so that's not possible anymore. That so we can say there's no excuse. There are so many teachers out here to learn from. So many practitioners to learn from. So that really was a powerful moment. And it was such a growth moment for me as well. Not just externally, now I look oh, well, she's just another one of those people that can be on summits. But it was taking into our own hands that agency, and then also collaborating, something I know you teach about a lot, platforming and sharing one another's work. And then also facing my own insecurities, because there were many people who critiqued that. And some of those critiques were very valid. And then some were, for perhaps other reasons, but I had to learn how to not be liked.
How to not be liked. Yeah, I know. That's a hard one for me. It's really hard. But it's true. I think when you put yourself out there and really take a stand of any kind, you're going to get pushback. But I think it's a sign that you're being effective, actually. So I know it had a big impact, and I really appreciate you doing that. I met a lot of great people through that. Actually, one of them is Simran, and he just made a comment to you.
Oh, nice.
Thank you for the beautiful tape present practices on. But and he'll be my guest on Friday. Actually, he's going to join me here.
Hello, Simran. I'm
Actually,
excited for that.
Anyway, so I want to connect back to the title that you gave for this conversation, and actually, it's funny because then well, maybe not funny. You introduced mantra already in our centering, and that was the title you used was connecting with technology as mantra, and I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to share about that. And first is like, we're all here online, right? Like, this is the medium now. This is the vehicle, and the medium both can change the message, can subvert the message, and can transmit the message, whatever that message is. And so for me, when I thought about when all of a sudden everything happened with COVID, and like, it's one of the hardest moments of our lives, right? Like, I think for yoga teachers, for everyone, but for yoga teachers who were so relational, like we both, I know you so well, and I like the warmth that you have and the joy I know it brings you to travel and to connect with students all over the world. Like, it's the same for me. Like, I love being around people, and all the teachers in accessible yoga, like, we're in uncharted territory, you know, and it's so challenging. And so as I started to realize that everything was shifting online, I think like many of us, I just was like, well, what in our practice, what in the practice can support us in doing that? And I very quickly, like you have, it's like, well, what is it that I do or I can do that also can help other yoga teachers do this more effectively? And so the very first thing that I thought of was about equity, because that's something I care about a lot. But then the next thing I thought about was, well, we're on this medium, and how can we relate with the medium yogically? And for me, that really is about using technology as a support for the mind. Well, what is mantra? A mantra is a support for the mind. Yeah. So that's where I came to the experience of technology as mantra, right? Like, a mantra is just a support for the mind. And so if we go online, you know, there are times I go online and I'm like Googling it up, trying to find information. I can't tell you how many times I've Googled coronavirus, right? So many of us. Sometimes that's not so fruitful, that path. But then there are times when I Google like how to boost my immune system or different things, right? Different experts, even something very practical, like how to get good sound on a video like this, right? And that is a very fruitful use of technology. But I am not there to be a teacher. I'm there to learn, right? So going online with that, just my intentionality, even like before I came on now with you, it's like, I'm here to connect with you, like first and foremost, with anyone else who's going to share in this. And then also just to be real, like to be authentic. And so I set an intention, which then allows me to connect in that medium for a certain purpose. When I go online later tonight to teach my online YTT, I will set an intention to teach and to let yoga speak through me and come through me, right? So that for me is when I think of technology as mantra, is like allowing it to support our minds.
Well, I mean, I think that's beautiful, because I don't know if technology always does. I think sometimes technology, to me, it's just another tool of the mind to get busier and more, to reach out even further and through the senses, you know. So it's like another, my teacher used to call it like a web, you know, like the World Wide Web. It's like another web to get caught in, just because the mind has a tendency to go out. And yoga is about turning back inside. But I like how you said it, that technology as support. Even mantra, I've heard it defined as protection for the mind. So it's great for kind of, you're like turning it around, and really thinking of technology as something we can use, you know, to support us in a positive way.
I mean, yeah, like there are moments where it's going to be helpful to say, well, I'm a yogi, I'm a yogic practitioner, I'm trying to practice this path, so I need to use the tools yogically, right? And then there's times when it's like, no, I just need to chill and watch Netflix and like relax my mind and not be yogic. At least I believe in this time. We can't, I cannot, I'm a householder, right? Like I have a regular life, I have a kid, dog, you know, things to take care of. And so there are times when I'm not engaging with technology yogically. But we can use it yogically. And I think bringing that intentionality and care, it's ahimsa too, like kindness to ourselves and understanding satya, the truth of what it is we're doing. For me, it's just, again, going into the practice and allowing the practice to support us in a new time and being patient with ourselves too.
Yeah, I've been trying not to read the news at night, you know, because it's too stressful and upsetting. And it's not that I don't want to read the news, but I just feel like it's not helping me if I read it right before I go to bed. But now my husband doesn't necessarily agree with that. So we are like the only fight, like one of the only fights we've been having this whole time has just been that he always wants to read like the latest news right as I'm going to sleep. And I just said, I don't want those thoughts right now. Like that's not healthy for my mind. So yeah, we have to, you're right, like being yogic. First of all, I think a lot of people don't realize that to be yogic means to work with your mind, you know.
Right.
That's what yoga is.
Yeah, and to kind of protect and care for, I like that word, protect the sense gates, right? Which what you're describing is a form of pratyahara, a form of saying like these sense inputs are not supportive to me. And I was doing the same as your husband. I was Googling late at night, you know, coronavirus, and I realized it wasn't supportive to my well-being or my mind. And I see it honestly, Jivana, as like I have to schedule my dose of anxiety. And I'm not scheduling my news time. I'm scheduling my anxiety time. And then I need to know what supports me in handling that anxiety, right? So if I'm going to look at the news, then I do the things that support me in calming my anxiousness.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh because I have anxiety, so it's serious for me. And I really have to, you know, yoga has been my tool to deal with that in my life. And so it's very serious for me. And I laugh because it's so true. Like it just, the news and the reality of the life and of our lives and how it's changed is so anxiety producing for me, and I think for so many of us. So I appreciate that idea of being conscious of the impact it has to be reading the news or thinking about difficult things, to be aware of our reaction in that way. But it's hard to balance that, wanting to stay conscious, reading the news, knowing what's going on out there. You know what I mean? Like it's not denial. It's not denial.
No, I don't think it needs to be denial. It's like, what's the appropriate amount? And that's discernment that you can use. And your discernment doesn't have to be the same as your husband's discernment or my discernment. Like that's the beauty of this, is there's so many paths.
Yeah. And that's my favorite word, actually, that you just used, discernment. It's really, to me, that is like the ultimate practice of yoga. And I feel like it's so often lost when people are teaching about what yoga is and how to practice. That process of discerning, clear vision and seeing clearly how our mind is working, how we're responding to things, what's going on around us, what we're taking in through our senses. I think that's really what yoga is about, you know. I just don't hear that being talked about very much. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the topic. So how do we do it in terms of equity? Because I think that was the theme, you know, is like you're talking about using technology as a support for the mind, but also supporting equity. Right? Was that what it was?
Totally. Yeah. It's right, bringing equity online. So it's an opportunity. One of the things I found is like, this is an opportunity for a lot of clarity. And so going through, say, who you follow on Instagram or who you learn from in the courses that you take, or who are the yoga teachers you're listening to on Facebook, or in whatever way you're listening, and looking like, well, are they accessible? Are they thinking about all different, you know, abilities? Are they thinking about different body expressions, different, do they bring different cultural perspectives? All of those things we have an opportunity to actually do right now. And this is something that I did a few years ago, and it changed my life. Like the ability to curate the input of yoga teachings for ourselves is there. But if we're just kind of going along, you may look at your feed or look at where the knowledge is coming from. Even if you're a person of color, right, who's disabled, who's queer, all of which I am, and see, like I did a few years ago, that all the teachers I was learning from were able-bodied, cisgendered, heterosexual, and white, and it was like, wait, what message? And that is not to say that any of those teachers is not they're all wonderful teachers. And I still learn from some of them in various ways, but now I also learn from queer teachers, from Black teachers, from, other South Asian teachers. It's really a matter of just like opening up the lens from like here to here. And so to me, it's like bringing equity online. With technology, we actually have a chance to practice with so many more people and to learn from so many more people. And so you, from the studentship side, receiving that chance and like making the most of it as much as we can. Again, it's like if you're not going to be online, I'm not saying go online more. I'm just saying if you're already doing it. And then from the teacher side, we have this opportunity for like we've never had before. And you're doing it with these conversations, right? To bring people in. But often I think for myself, I used to think like, who am I? I'm just some little, brown girl, whatever, doing my thing. Like I can't bring on this teacher, this teacher, this teacher. I'm nobody. But the thing is, I only became somebody. I was always somebody, right? But I became somebody in the yoga world when I brought those people in, one. And two, I just asked. Some people said no, some people said yes, but I took that chance to ask. And so as teachers, we have the opportunity to bring people in. So I'll give you a concrete example of what I mean. Like I'm about to teach a 300-hour training that was supposed to be in person in Orlando. It's going online. And I just asked all the mostly teachers of color and queer, teachers that I know, if they would be willing to teach in the training. And many of them said yes. And so now I never could have flown them in, right, to Orlando where I live. That wouldn't have been possible. But now we have a training that's so much better and that fills in the gaps of my experience. Because sure, I have a lot of knowledge and training, but that doesn't mean I can speak from the perspective of a Latinx queer person or, a Black trans man. I just don't have those life experiences. And so bringing in co-teachers or collaborating, working together we have an amazing opportunity to do that. And I think also like that's another way to bring equity online, as well as giving back, right? So like from the work that we do, if we are making money, so concretely, again, I'll give a personal example. I am I subscribe, so I give like a monthly donation to Black Lives Matter in the US and then to a number of organizations in India that further yogic teachings and also bring more equity to different communities that are disadvantaged. And so those are things that what I am committed to doing and what I invite folks to consider. How can you, maybe you don't have the economic means to give back. And I'm like, those donations have fluctuated from $1, up. I try to stay committed and consistent with that, to always I see it as reparations, like giving back to communities who don't have the same advantages.
That's beautiful. I like the point you made about having more access right now, because if you're a student learning online or taking classes online, you can take classes with anyone. It doesn't matter where they are physically.
Doesn't matter where they are. Yeah. And I mean, there is a divide, and it's really hard. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, for folks who don't have internet, who don't have Wi-Fi, who don't have access to a computer or a phone, that there is a technological divide, right? So it's not that we can fully solve for equity by bringing stuff online. I'm not saying that at all. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think people who are, I had a talk a few weeks back with Ryan McGraw, who's a disability activist in Chicago, just talking about how his work is about speaking up for people who live in nursing homes in Chicago or just around that area, and just how they have no voice right now. They have no access to any kind of communication at all, like the internet or phones or anything. So I think a lot of people are isolated right now. I'm sure incarcerated populations, I mean, many populations that just are separate from this conversation. It's really difficult to figure that out. I agree. Like, I don't know. One thing I'll say that I keep saying is that obviously internet access is not a privilege. It shouldn't be, right? This is something that really should be something everyone has access to, just like other basic human rights. It's something that I think we've seen has become much more important just during this time, especially.
Yeah.
But I just want to go back to what you said, which is we do have access to all these teachers. So it's very exciting. We can pick who you study with. And I'm getting to take classes and courses with people all over the world. And I do think there's a lot of opportunity here. I don't think it's all bad. I mean, I have a lot of concerns about what's happening, of course, because I feel like just yoga-wise, I think a lot of smaller yoga studios are suffering, and independent studios will end up probably having to close, and that really worries me. I think there tends to be like the larger corporate, money comes in and fills a void. So I'm worried about that. But I like that you're focusing on the positive, which is that we have access right now. And actually, it's influencing my work too. I have the Accessible Yoga Conference, which you were the keynote speaker for our conference last year in St. Louis. Do you remember?
I loved it. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that conference. Are you going online?
Yeah, so we're going to go online. We're going to be online in October. And I've been thinking a lot about how there's more opportunity for us. There's more. I mean, there's so many things we can't do when we're just online, but there's things we can do. And part of that is connecting people doing similar work around the world. So one of the themes will be that, kind of like global connection. People who are working outside of commercial yoga, the commercial yoga industry, and doing important work, trying to connect them with each other. So, we'll have kind of like community conversations like this, but with a whole bunch of people who maybe work with like yoga for veterans or yoga for incarcerated populations or, like that, just trying to connect people as best we can.
Jivana, I just have to say, like, this makes me so excited. And it's because I think, like, it is a terrible time, right? There's so many things that are just unspeakably, it's so hard to even wrap my head around or to deal with, and the loss that people are experiencing on so many levels. Like, I'm not trying to overlook that, but I think it's like even with sitting with that, with acknowledging that, with facing our own mortality, all of the things that many of us are doing or having to do, there is this, like, what you're describing is so incredible. And the possibility of getting to connect with folks who are doing similar work, like really connect and spend some deep time, the way that I know the Accessible Yoga Conference goes, getting to go deep and getting to kind of share best practices and learn together. That's really exciting. And I found myself, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. That's mainly what I do, is like really excited for the ways to teach now. Like, what does it look like to teach well in an online environment? And how can we as yoga teachers or as knowledge workers, whatever work we're doing, how can we still transmit, like, not just the knowledge, but the experience, the embodied experience of yogic truth. And so I've been very excited, and what you're sharing is really inspiring.
Do you have ideas? Do you have any suggestions about that, about how we can do a good job teaching yoga online? I mean, did you give a webinar about that? I think
I did. Yeah, I have a couple webinars that are up for free. I mean, invited to donate, but they're essentially free, so anyone can access them. Just watch them and do what you will. But I have 3 webinars. The first one was going online equitably, like bringing equity online, so similar theme. The second one was technology as mantra, right, and going deeper into that, as well as I really wanted to, I'll just show you in a second, like the setup, like it looks pretty nice here. It's intentional, right? Like there are things we can do, like the rest of the room doesn't look exactly like this does, which on one level could be seen as fake, but on another level, it's just setting the environment, right? I don't want to have, if I had my dirty laundry or clean laundry behind, I would just throw a sheet over it because no one needs to see that. But it's not going to stop me from going online, but the setup is important. So the second webinar is on like how we can use tech, both DIY as well as like semi-professional, right? So I'll just show you real quick for those watching. I have 2 lights here. Like I got a little light that's $20 and that light is more expensive. It's like $150, right? And then a camera, which I can't show you because I'm using it, but a little camera plug-in. But there's ways to do these things that are do-it-yourself, like with a flashlight and a sheet, or a flashlight and a piece of white cardboard, or like poster board that you could shine. And I filmed that way with that there to give myself a little bit better lighting, which makes for a better experience for the student because they can see me because I'm better lit. So absolutely. I think there's tools there. And then the last one was on being a magnetic and effective teacher. And so I do online. I think about that a lot. And the 2 biggest things are changing the, like, essentially, like right now, I'll just do it. So for anyone listening, it's like, look around the room and notice like a color that you see. So right now I'm looking at a green plant and a red painting, and then look in the other direction and notice something alive. Could be a plant, could be a bug. If there's nothing alive, maybe notice something that once was alive, like wood or a table or a wall. And so just by switching the environment, like switching what we're doing, that's a way to stay engaged. And then also people watching will match the energy that we bring. Actually, it's a little bit less usually. So in a class, so I have to really bring energy, and then I'll invite engagement, invite people.
Wait, so explain that part again, if you don't mind. So the sensing piece you're recommending for the instructor?
And for the instructor to guide it. So like guide your students. I mean, it depends on if you're teaching asana or like conversational. If we're teaching asana, your students are probably not looking at the screen. But if we're in a conversation, we're looking at a screen for half an hour, 40 minutes, right? So it's like get your eyes. Sometimes we do drishti practice. So take your finger, gaze at your finger, right? And watch it as it goes like that, just as a way of focusing. I will do that with my students. So I'll explicitly guide that if we're in a conversation. If we're in asana, also like orienting the body in space, because it can feel a little disconnected when you're getting instruction from a teacher on a screen, right? So where are you? Where are things around you? So yes, so concretely that orientation, like sensory orientation.
And then the second thing you said was about bringing a lot of energy as the teacher. I don't know how you said it, but it was basically that, right? That I think it's almost, maybe you have to bring more energy when you're teaching online. You have to be almost more focused and present, it seems like. To me, it's a little more tiring, I find. I'm not getting something back from the students. I'm not getting that energy kind of feedback that I normally get when I'm teaching in real life.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're like my yoga sibling, Jivana, because you and I thrive on, like, I really like that feedback too, the in-person feedback. But I've learned ways to get it online, but also to set things up so it's okay even if I don't, right? So, because it's so hard when you're teaching and you ask a question and it's just like silent Zoom faces, and you're like, come on, y'all, like, I'm asking you, give me something here. But now I'm saying, like, this isn't where you can just sit back passively. Like, when I ask a question, let's have 100% participation and be typing in the chat or speaking out if you can, if you're able. Of course, some people can't, and they just need to receive and let it wash over them, and that's fine too. But inviting people to know that what they do or don't do has an impact. And then for me, I on Zoom use breakout rooms a lot. So I'm constantly like, I'll give maybe, because I do more lecture style because I'm teaching yoga teacher trainings often, more than asana right now, although asana is part of that. But I'll give an instruction, like say we're talking about sequencing and trauma-informed sequencing, something like that. Then I'll do a call and response practice. So we'll stand up and I'll say something and the students will repeat it. And then we'll break out into small groups, discuss it, come back, journal out our own, 3 shapes that we're going to cue, and then break back out, team up, and practice teach, right? So there's a lot of back and forth kind of, it's not just lecture. Because that's draining. It's super draining for us. But when we're engaging like that, I'm actually receiving a lot from hearing them talk to each other, from their ideas. And then when we come back from the team teaching, they're teaching the whole group. So there's a lot we can do on Zoom. And then I also love, or other web technology we're using, but using the whiteboard and doing slide presentations or different forms of instruction that I couldn't have done before, like sharing my manual while I'm like, I can share my screen and talk through things and then write on it. It's so cool. So those, for me, those things get me excited because they're more dynamic ways of teaching.
Yeah. I'm going to offer my training online for the first time in June. And so I'm kind of deep in the middle of all that, like how to make the experience translate online. I think there's some benefits. Some things are lost, but some things are gained. So,
do you have any questions about that? Like, what would work well?
It's really helpful to hear you talk about it. For me, but I don't know if it's useful for other people. But I'm really enjoying this because I've been teaching online a lot, but not my training. This is like the main offering I do in the world. I lead like tons of them, and we have like 9 other trainers, and usually we offer like 40 of them a year around the world. Like this has been our main project.
Yeah.
But we've never done it online. And I think so much of what we did was based on that interpersonal connection, community building.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be a pretty big group, I think. So it's going to be hard to break out during the class time. So I'm
kind of still do it. I don't know how big you have.
I don't know either yet. But
I had a training group of 60, and we broke out into smaller groups for things. So it's very possible. So I'm happy to share. Now I think it's helpful for people because people may be running workshops, right? Like we don't know what kind of workshops. Teachers many teachers teach asana, but they also maybe teach workshops on energy anatomy, or they teach workshops on moon circles, or there's so many things that people run. So I do think it's helpful. And that is like effective teaching is something I'm so passionate about. I hope to, by the way, I'm hoping to join your training.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, well, I have my other trainers are going to join and they'll lead small groups. So we're going to have time with them. But yeah, we'll figure it out. I don't know. Maybe I'll give you a call.
Please do. I'm happy to talk it through. Like this is what I love to do, what I think about all the time.
Yeah. It is exciting in a way to have new challenges, I think.
Yeah.
But it's also just, difficult. I mean, personally, like for me, I'm not traveling, and that was my main source of income is traveling and teaching, and that's like all gone. Like I don't know if I'll get to travel this year at all. So I'm trying to do more online stuff, and I'm lucky I have some opportunities. But I think for many yoga teachers, they're struggling just to survive.
Many people are, and it's like I also just want to say it's like it's hard to think about equity for others when we're struggling just to survive. And so I do want to acknowledge that, and it's like in those moments, though, I guess it's like, well, what would then equity look like for yourself, right? Like, can you reach out? Can you ask for support?
Mm-hmm.
Who could help support? I know there are a lot of funds, folks you've interviewed, who have funds to support yoga teachers, because it's so hard. Like, I don't know that our profession, I don't know what's going to happen with our profession, or how it's going to look out the other side of this, or what even the other side of it is. You know?
I know. It's almost scarier now. I mean, it was scary how we had to shut down and stop doing everything, but I feel like this getting back is more difficult somehow, because it's so feels like the unknown. We're entering an unknown time.
Yeah.
I mean, life is always a bit unknown, but this feels particularly unusual. I posted this morning in our accessible yoga community group where we're doing this, a question, how do people feel about going back to teaching? And the reason I asked is because, to teaching in person, is because I know some studios are actually opening right now. And I was kind of shocked by that. And I was trying not to be judgmental about it, but I wanted to hear what people think. And people were kind of shocked, I think, that I even asked that question. But I feel like we need to have this conversation because it's happening.
Why were they shocked about you asking?
Well, I think for a lot of places, we're just still in lockdown, so it's not an option yet. And I get that.
Yeah.
That's true here in California. We're still in lockdown. It's not an option to teach in person yet. But I think other states, and I know in Hong Kong, they're already teaching.
Like mine. I walked past the studio that was open, and I really? Wow. And wow, yeah, they're trying to survive, and trying to get the tools that they know best to their clientele. It's just such a complex moment of choices and of impacts from those choices that are hard to understand all over the ramifications there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think back a lot to the AIDS epidemic that I lived through in the 80s and 90s with my community. And, a lot of people, we're still living through it. I mean, AIDS hasn't gone away, and HIV is still a big part of our lives. It's like something like 36 million people around the world have HIV. But, it was a really difficult time. It lasted for years and years and years. And I feel like this is a very similar experience that's happening more globally. That felt kind of like I feel like I was living a parallel life back then. Like my community, mostly of gay men, was kind of like having this total terrible epidemic. My friends were sick and dying, and yet it seemed like the rest of the world is moving along like normal, which is so weird. And the difference now I see is kind of everyone's a bit in shock and feeling equally vulnerable. So that's helpful, but I still feel like that divide, we see that divide.
Yeah, and the truth is it's not everyone. Like here, the people who are out and who are doing things in the studios that are opening are a more privileged segment of the population who in general are not as hard hit by COVID, so it's still, those disparities are still very stark, and it's different. It's absolutely different. So than the AIDS epidemic and what you're describing. But I think there's some insight from, folks like you that maybe can shed on, well, what does it feel like to be kind of under siege while the rest of the world is going along? Like, what were the tools or the things that brought you? I don't know, how did you even deal with that, right? I using the word resilience just feels like putting something on. I'm sure when you were going through it, you weren't like, how do I cultivate my resilience? You were just doing it.
Yeah, it was yoga actually got me through, and that's how accessible yoga started, because I was practicing for myself, and I was an AIDS activist, and I was demonstrating and getting arrested, and I was volunteering at a AIDS hospice, working for an AIDS magazine, and it was just my best friend died in 1995, which I always talk about him. But I realized that, but I was already doing yoga, like I said, and it was my refuge, and it saved my life personally. I mean, it just kept me together. And I feel like not in the way that I hear people talking about it, which is frustrating to me a little bit. I hear a lot of kind of like prescriptive ideas about yoga as treatment, and that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about emotionally, like spiritually. So I think what happened to me during the AIDS epidemic is that I had a kind of just like almost a crisis of, I don't know, what's the word, like a belief. It's like I started to doubt why I was alive and what was happening around me. I mean, it was like literally it was living like through a war or something. And but I think yoga offered a support for me emotionally, for my nervous system and my mind to be settle down and calm. There's that moment of relief in a very difficult time. It's not that it's physically saved me. Like that's what you know what I'm saying? That's different. And that's not what I'm talking about. I think yoga is the answer, but it's not like a cure. It's just an answer for our parts.
Right. No, I think that's a really important distinction because people do confuse that. And it's like, things like having death sit on our shoulder and guide us. You don't see a lot of teachers talking about that, right? Or cueing that.
I love that image. There's a little bird. That's a Buddhist practice, right? You have a little bird sitting on your shoulder saying, "You're going to die today."
Yeah, but the original teachings, one of the stories, came through the god of death, through Yama. Right. And so it's like death has always been a companion and a teacher in yogic practice. And many of us live our lives in complete, or have, not everyone, right, of course, but many people live our lives. And I would put myself in that category in many ways, actually, up until more recently, the last decade, in somewhat denial of death or my own mortality or the loss of people that I love. And even though we have the yama aparigraha, like letting go, impermanence, living in denial of that. And so now is the time for me, the way I'm connecting to what you're sharing is like to rely on those teachings, to instead of be in denial, or instead of go into, for myself, like complete anxiety and freak out and like overwhelm, is like, okay, well, what can I do to re-regulate my nervous system so I can face the fact that, many members of the world that we love are not going to make it through this time. And people we know, people we don't know, and we don't know if we are. And that is so, that on one level is like so unimaginable to be facing, but at the same time, it's like the practice is there and has been there to support us with just facing and dealing with these truths of life that don't, there's not much that we can bring in a moment of death, right? Like I remember facing, when I was in India, I was living in Bodh Gaya for a while, and studying and teaching at a local school, right? But also studying with Shankarji, my teacher, and the Shankaracharya tradition. And I happened to get parasite, and was pretty sick, but was getting better. I was taking antibiotics. It was very hot in the season I was there. And I went on a walk from Bodh Gaya out to the caves where Buddha did his austerity practice, right? So I kind of traced the steps backwards from the Bodhi tree, past the Bodhi tree, and on, and then back. It was like maybe 107 degrees Fahrenheit. And I got really, really sick. I got back and I basically had heat exhaustion or heat stroke or heat poisoning. I don't know the gradations, right? But I was in just a little local clinic. I'm allergic to sulfa drugs. A doctor came in, had a needle, and was like, we're trying to communicate. It's like, I'm going to give you this shot. And I'm like, no, you're not giving me this shot because I don't know what's in that shot. Wow. Barely conscious. Like I knew there was a possibility I was going to die in that moment. I've had a few of these moments in my life, but all I had, besides being really clear about that when I was lucid enough to be, was coming back to compassion, was coming back to kindness for myself and like sending out compassionate thoughts. And that was it, right? I went in and out. Even I was so affected that I wasn't lucid. So I was actually sometimes a little bit aggressive. The folks who were there told me, not like hitting people, but just like angry. But the thing I had to support me was that calm, the calm that yoga brings, and coming back to the practice. And so that's what we've got, you know. It's like in that moment, they're like I could have not been here if they had given me that shot, or if I hadn't recovered from the heat poisoning, whatever I had. But I was lucky, and I did feel like the practice provided not protection physically, just like you're saying, but protection mentally or spiritually.
Like the mantra, that's what you started with.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. I've had many experiences like that too. And just, you know, to me, that's what yoga is really about. I feel like people don't get that, you know, that's what spiritual practice is, right?
Yeah.
To help relieve that kind of anxiety of being alive, not understanding, you know, who we are, what's happening to me, why am I here? Like that's what yoga is for, right? Is to like build a connection with ourself beyond that worried mind, to go a little deeper. And I think that we're so lucky. I feel like we have these incredible tools to make that journey, you know, inward, and to learn how to work with our minds so we can do it. And I feel grateful to that. And I feel like, you know, I feel like we need yoga more than ever, but I feel like it's just, we need to find a way to teach it that connects directly to those teachings.
Yeah.
And that's safe, right? And equitable.
Right. Because without doing this, it's like we're watering it down. We're transmitting a yoga that isn't the true practice. And that also, you know, makes it less accessible for the future students, if people think yoga is just fitness. And it's these things that I really, the teachings that have changed my life and supported my life, and I've seen support other people, that I'm so passionate about people transmitting. And why I talk about cultural appropriation and why I talk about honoring yoga's roots is because this is what it means to honor the roots of yoga, is to share the full expanse of the practice, and to not just share it, but experience it, and constantly go back to practicing it as best as we can.
Definitely. I know I always say that accessible yoga is not about adapting the practice. It's about connecting to the truth of yoga, which is already accessible, right? That yoga is accessible by nature, because these are universal spiritual teachings. And actually, those are the ones that are real and true. You know, those are the timeless teachings of yoga that are already accessible. So we don't have to change them. We just need to get them. We need to get to them. You know?
Yes.
That's what I mean by accessible. It's not like changing something. It's getting it. It's getting access, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, I love that. I know. I love what you're doing. All right. Well, we should probably wrap up. So I wonder if you have any final thoughts for us. But I just want to say I love that, and I'm just so glad we talked about it, because I always feel that way. Like illness and death it's not. It's painful, but it can be our greatest teacher. You know.
Yeah, and I think for those who might be, like, some people are going through sickness or, you know, disability, like we all get born into different experiences, right? And I happen to have multiple disabilities, and then different things that have happened in my life that have changed my ability status at various times. And some people may not have had those experiences, or some people may live with chronic pain, for example, or things that give us a very different window onto what it is to live. And no matter what, it's like yoga can be there to support. But also just acknowledging that what my experience isn't the same as yours, or the next person. And so those things, even the spiritual truths that resonate for me, may be different than for someone else, and that there's enough in yoga to support all of us. I think about that a lot. That's as beautiful. Well. Yeah. No, I think I feel really grateful to you and to this community and to all the teachers who might watch or listen to this. Like, we're really the ones like doing what we need to do to make the practice accessible for ourselves, so then we can share it out. And just whatever we can do to support, I think already that's so much. And so just taking some time to acknowledge ourselves, all of us, like you and all the work that you do, and definitely myself and the work that I do. I don't spend enough time like acknowledging. And then for people listening and watching, like, I do really believe a lot in, we got to dance at the revolution. We have to celebrate ourselves. Even when things are falling apart, and even when they're so like incredibly difficult, celebration, art, music, like bringing joy, spending time in community like this is really precious.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. That's such an important message. I love that. We'll dance at the revolution.
Yes.
But also, I do want to appreciate you and what you've done and the work you're doing. It's just incredible. So I love watching you and meeting with you and being in community with you. I learn so much from you every time we talk. So thank you so much, Susanna. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you, Jivana. Oh, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.